Hello and welcome to Rach Aquarelle. My name is Rachel, and in this video I've sped it up about 4 times. I think originally this painting took just about exactly 100 minutes, which seems to be a common theme lately somehow. But I figured I would do this video just a little bit different. So I am doing a watercolor painting of my 2 dogs, Watson on the left and Hazel on the right. And I decided to just take the opportunity today to do a personal project because it is apparently International Dog Day. So it seemed fitting that I would paint my 2 dogs. And I actually am using 2 completely separate photographs to work from to do this painting because, well, my dogs are both Boston Terrier mixes, and if you know anything about Boston Terriers, you would know that they don't hold still very well. Now, they often do cuddle with each other, but it just seems like it never works out that I get a great photograph of both of them at the same time. So I took pictures of each of them separately, and then I just drew them as if they were actually sitting next to each other. So that's one of the great things about art. I suppose someone who is really good at Photoshop could have created an actual photo composite. But anyway, rather than doing a tutorial, I figured I would just take this opportunity to introduce myself and kind of tell you a little bit about my background and my intentions for my YouTube channel, just in case anyone might be interested. So I have been doing art literally my entire life. From the earliest ages that I can remember, I was drawing constantly. I never really painted until maybe high school. I just loved drawing, and I was obsessed with trying to draw realistically, even since preschool. I remember that my mom would bring home computer printer paper from her job, and this was back in the 80s, and I remember that printer paper, it had green and white stripes on it, and it had perforated edges, and the edges, you could tear those off, but they had holes along the sides because the printers would have sort of gears that would use those holes to pull the paper through the printer, and I could not get enough. I just absolutely loved drawing, and I think what's kind of funny is that I really didn't like coloring at all when I was a kid at any point. I always felt a little bit annoyed, and I think part of that was because it was already drawn, so the part that I enjoyed the most was already done for me. So I just kind of think that's a little bit funny. And so, of course, I grew up in a small town, and being in a small town, you have, I think, the opportunity to really define yourself because you're not surrounded by too many other kids, so in a way it's a little bit easier to feel unique. And so I really felt like what made me unique was my desire to be constantly drawing and to be really good at drawing. I remember kids would stand behind me in school and just watch me draw and ask, "How did you do that?" And, I mean, the answer to anything, I think, is, I guess, just doing it. And I think you realize that more, actually, as you get older, because when we're kids, and if you have the experience of having any kind of really strong interest as a child that you're kind of just drawn to, you don't really think about all the work that you're putting in. And it's not until you're a little bit older and you decide that you want to start something or you want to acquire a skill, and then you suddenly realize that it's kind of an uphill process when you're getting a late start. And as adults, we're very busy with the necessities of life. There just isn't quite as much leisure time for us. So it's a little bit more difficult to put in that time and that effort into building skills, but I definitely have jumped on board with that mindset that there really is not such a thing as intrinsic or inherent talent. I think every once in a while you might find someone who has an intrinsic interest that drives them to pursue something. And so that was kind of the case for me with art, at least during my childhood. And that is one thing that I hope to bring to my YouTube channel, just this idea that you can start now, you can start anytime to build a skill that you want, whether you want to build your artistic skills or some other skill that you have in mind, or maybe you just want a hobby and you want to be able to feel confident in that hobby, whether it's painting or anything else. So I really hope to be a resource to help this process be just a little bit easier and maybe bring a different approach, because especially with watercolors, I feel like I paint maybe a little bit differently than some of the other watercolor artists that I've seen, and I'm always learning myself. It's not the case that, I think that my way of doing watercolor is the right way. I'm always learning from other artists, but I think that I might have some unique inputs that might be beneficial, and that was something that was really important for me to kind of recognize before I even started this channel, because there's already so many amazing artists on YouTube doing, whether they're long tutorials or short tutorials or just time lapses, and I plan to kind of mix those formats on my channel. But I really needed to know that I had something to contribute to this community before I decided that I was really going to dive into this as a long-term project. So that is partly my intention, or well, it's my full intention, but it's not everything that I'm thinking about as I develop my YouTube channel. I'm also, of course, wanting to emphasize relaxation, mindfulness, and a very casual, relaxed approach to art and watercolor. So I actually do teach art locally. I just started though, so I don't have a lot of experience with teaching. But what I have learned so far, and maybe my biggest takeaway, is that people have a desire to learn something like, painting, or, it can be any other skill. And all of my students are adults, by the way. So there's this desire that people have to learn something new. And a lot of times the intentions of my students are just to have a hobby, something that they can practice. A lot of my students are either nearing retirement age, or they are retired, or they might be moms who they need something outside of kids just for themselves. And so my other intention for my channel is just to help foster an approach to learning art that is relaxed and loose, and I think it has to be fun, because as adults we have so many things that we are obligated to do, and in order to develop a hobby, a new skill, I think it has to be an enjoyable process, so that you come to it not as work, not as a struggle, not as a source of frustration, but as a source of recreation. So I want my students to want to get home and paint, and I want that to be a rejuvenating experience. And so that's why I've decided to approach the tutorial narrations of this channel, for the most part, in the ASMR style, or at least soft spoken and not rushed, because I think and I hope that that will facilitate this being an enjoyable process for my students. And of course, I'm relatively new to teaching. I'm also very new to making videos. And right now I am just making all of my videos on my phone. So I do all the recording on my phone, and then I also have my video editing software just on my phone. And that's been a learning process for me, but so far I'm really enjoying it. I can't tell you how many videos I've made over the last year or so that just didn't work out for any number of reasons. I think a big struggle with making videos of art is just the actual physical setup. One of my other struggles is actually that I've been wanting to do an ASMR style channel. However, I have these two little Boston Terriers, and they're very active, and they don't exactly facilitate a quiet, peaceful environment. And that's why I am doing voiceovers, and I do the voiceovers pretty late at night because my dogs go to sleep, and that's just about the only time that I can even hope that they won't be barking and wrestling around in the background. Although any tiny small noise tends to wake them up and startle them, so at least that might be a little bit easier for me to edit out than when I'm actually trying to focus on my painting and narrating a tutorial. So you might actually hear them snoring in the background of some of my voiceovers. That is certainly a possibility. And I am sure that I will learn to improve the quality of my videos as I go. And I really do hope that my channel catches on a little bit, and then I will plan on investing in some other equipment, maybe finding some way to at least do my voiceovers in an environment that is a little more peaceful. But I think for now this will work well. So I've told you just a little bit about myself, but I'll tell you a few more things about me. So I told you that I was kind of an artsy kid growing up, but by the time I got to high school, even though I was still very much into art and very focused on that just for, purposes of school and my own pursuits, I really didn't see it as a viable career option. So I went to college and I did study art. I studied painting and graphic design, but then I also did a dual degree in social work, and I just sort of knew or told myself that social work would be my primary career. Actually, I didn't even really plan to be a social worker. I was going to go to law school, and I was enrolled in law school, but I started feeling very anxious about debt and just kind of wanting to get out into the workforce. So I dropped out of law school, and I worked in the social work field for over a decade in a variety of settings. And my art really kind of fell by the wayside. I had always intended for it to be something that I would do in the evenings after work, but as life would have it, and I think we all can relate, that just really didn't work out. I always had kind of a studio area set up in my house, but my job tended to, on some kind of emotional level, just really kind of wear me down. And when I would get home, I could, barely take care of myself and my family, let alone find time to paint. So I eventually started to gain a little bit more balance between work and my personal life, and I made some pretty big changes actually in my life so that I could achieve a little bit more balance. And I started working just part-time for a little while, and I spent a lot of time painting and building my skills, because even though I studied art in college, honestly, I really didn't learn anything new in college. In fact, some of my high school artwork was better than my college artwork, and I think a lot of that too was just feeling like I had to pursue a quote-unquote real career and I also worked multiple part-time jobs, and I was raising my daughter by myself. So I know that I didn't put my full effort into art in college. So within the last maybe 3 or 4 years, I felt like I really had to build my skills from the ground up. And I started an Etsy shop where I offered commissions and I sold original art. And I built that up to a point where I felt I could quit my job, which I was actually working full-time. At that time, I worked part-time for a little while, and then I worked full-time again in the social work field. So I quit that full-time job about just over a year ago from now to really put all of my efforts into art. And so that's what I do now. I do a variety of things. I don't just sell on Etsy. Of course, I teach, and I also started teaching online, and I still do lots of commissions, and I sell originals when I can. I do some drop shipping of printed products with my artwork printed on them, and it's a struggle, but it comes together and it's improving. And I really believe that we all have our one life here on earth, and if you have something that really drives you and that you are passionate about it, I think it's worthwhile to really pursue that and not let opportunities pass you by. And that is what I am living right now, because again, I think that we can all take ownership of our own lives and our own destinies. And I think it's a good idea to really reflect on what you want your purpose in life to be. And maybe there's no reason to wait for the quote-unquote right moment to pursue that, because I guess one observation I've had in life and from talking to people is that there's never going to be a right moment. Things are never going to fall into place the way that you think they should in order for you to pursue what you want to do. I guess I shouldn't say they never do, but you really can't count on that. You can't wait for that. Now, that's not to be confused with me saying that everyone should go and quit their job, because honestly, I've struggled over the last year. It has not all just been peaches. It has continually improved, but sometimes the improvements don't come as fast as you'd like. They don't always happen exactly when you need them most. But I think that for anyone, there's gotta be a way to pursue the life of your choice, even if it's slow. But starting is the main thing. So that's just a little bit about me and what I want to bring to this community. And I would really love to hear any feedback from you, whether it's technical or anything else, in the comments. and I hope you have a great day.